Everybody, my guest on the show today is somebody that I met 5 minutes ago, maybe, which is always a lot of fun for me because you're going to get to know him just like I'm going to get to know him live in real time. Well, not live because you're going to be listening to a recording of a podcast, but it'll be live for the two of us. My guest today is Stefan Georgi. He's the founder of Copy Accelerator. He's a mastermind creator, and his copy has sold over $1 billion in products. I have a feeling you got some magic for us today. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jason. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I commented on this when we hopped on together. We're on video. People are going to be listening to this. You have one of the coolest pieces of artwork I've ever seen, and I would just want to quickly describe it, and maybe if you could just name the artist. It looks like it's like a sketchbook, but it's not a sketchbook. It's actually an art piece. And it's got a Reese's Pieces box, but instead of Reese's Pieces, it says Matisse's Pieces, like the artist Matisse, Henry Matisse, right? Which is just, it's really a stunning thing. So people that see the promo will see it. People that are just listening to this episode will not. Who's the artist?
So it's an artist named Ben Steele, and he's in, I guess, like Utah, Wyoming, that kind of area. So I saw some of his paintings at a gallery in Park City prior to COVID, and I saw including this piece and kind of like liked it, but didn't end up buying. And then maybe a year or two later, we were moving into a new house, and I went to that gallery's website, and I saw a lot of his stuff was selling pretty quickly in general, which is good if you're going to invest in art. But this one had not been sold, and I think maybe the gallery was closed because of COVID, and they didn't have a very good website. It was hard to even find it, and so I reached out to them and gave them an offer for a bit less than what they were trying to sell it for, and they said yes to it. So pulled the trigger. But I really like. There you go. Really cool artist. Yeah, very lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I like the style. I'm going to definitely look it up for myself for my own space too. All right, let's get into it. So first question for you is, what is something that you nerd out about?
Right now, a lot of it is AI, which is, just sort of having a zeitgeist moment where a lot of people are talking about it. There is a new chat feature called Open Chat from a company called OpenAI, where essentially you can go and ask it questions, the AI questions, and it will answer them. You can tell it to describe a scene from make up a movie scene. Tell me 10 awkward things that could happen, right? You can do so much with it. It's really very powerful, and a lot of the limit is just your creativity. So currently I'm going very deep on that because as a creative for a profession, as a copywriter and marketer, a lot of what drew me to that was creativity and using creative kind of prompts and figuring out ways to get most interesting outputs from the AI has been something I've been just really fascinated by.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I know that I won't name them, but I know that there's a few platforms out there now that advertise as for people like me. I'm not a copywriter. I don't like writing. Use our service. It'll write you blogs and do these things or give you a good output. So I would have thought that perhaps, so I'm hearing you see it as additive to your industry because they're never going to it's never going to get all the way there. It's going to give you potentially inspiration.
Yeah, I think that I have changed my thinking on this a bit, and to where before I understood it, I was more skeptical. And now I think that it may replace a lot of copywriters, but it's mostly going to be the copywriters who kind of didn't have any business being a copywriter to start with, because
using a
just
template.
like with any side hustle type of thing, right? It's like people will get attracted to copywriting because I can make money by writing. That sounds good, but they're not actually interested in the art or the craft of copywriting. And so those people who don't really focus, like anything, if you don't focus on getting really good at your craft, it's hard to get to the top of the profession, right? You got to put the work in. And so there's a lot of people who are quote unquote copywriters who aren't particularly great at it. And that's not me being shady towards them. It's because they haven't put any effort into it. And frankly, the AI is better. The copy it produces now, including from those platforms, is better than I think what probably 80%, of copywriters would put out. However, for copywriters who do actually understand copy, who understand the structure of a sales message and things like that, for us, I think it's a really powerful tool because it just makes everything faster and more efficient. It's just it's a prompt tool. There's no blank page. You won't have writer's block. You want to generate a bunch of ideas. There's a lot of really powerful things that are happening because of it.
Yeah, that's super cool. I've tested one of those solutions, and again, I can write okay, but I don't like it. It's like I would much prefer to just hire somebody like you to do my work for me. It's cool to know that. I think the thing you just said there that's really inspirational is no more writer's block. Hey, I got an idea, but I don't know how to phrase it right, or I don't know if it's going to be right for this client. Let's throw it into the machines and see what the machines do with it. And then from there, I think there's always the element of the human thing. That, like, this is also something that is happening in the industry that I'm in, which is the coaching and leadership development. There's a lot of AI stuff happening there too. And it's the idea that you can kind of get people so far with it, but not all the way, usually, because there's so much use in like the greatest computer that's ever going to be designed, which is really the human, because we can bring emotion into it, and we can bring things that aren't purely binary or logic. So very cool. Very cool. I'm sure we're going to talk more about this on the episode today. So let's see. What do I want to ask you next? Let's talk about your comfort zone. Let's talk about something that is inside of your comfort zone, and you know that it is outside of other people's. And I'm going to take speaking and coming on podcast off the table, because that would just be way too easy, Steph.
Right.
Way too easy.
Yeah, I think one, and I've been meditating on this today a lot, actually, is failure, right? Is a comfort with failure and being stretched or pushed or really in the unknown and taking risks and the possibility of failure. It's a pretty common thing for successful entrepreneurs, but it's something that those who aren't entrepreneurs have a very different relationship with. And the thing I was sort of meditating on and created a little content around today for myself was I'm reading this book called Build by Tony Fadell, who's the guy who helped.
I just had that recommended by. I just had somebody on my podcast last week recommend it. He said it's phenomenal.
It's really good so far. I'm really enjoying it. And really early on, he talks about how the school system gets it wrong, and that you're taught that failure is this bad thing, right? And it's true. And then what I started meditating on is how there's kind of this conflicting advice, because from the time you're a kid, it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes happen. You learn about the scientific method, and it's about the process and the experiment. But then at the same time, in the school system, it's like, don't get a failing grade. Don't fail this test, don't fail this assignment. And so we've got these two different kind of inputs going into our brain from the time we're a kid. So no wonder we have this weird messed up relationship with failure by the time we get to adulthood.
Totally.
But as an entrepreneur, you have to throw that out the window, and you have to learn to embrace failure and really look at it as like a currency almost, right? Because it's like the more failures you accrue, the more likely you are to cash them in for something else, like a big win or more confidence or whatever it may be. Yeah,
I really like that. I also like the idea of failure is just as a context, meaning that failure isn't necessarily what you may see as a failure, may be not a failure to somebody else.
Yeah.
And this is something that I had to learn. I worked in sales for 20 years. So it's kind of binary in failure. Like and I think as when I came into my entrepreneurial journey, I'm like, I either do this or I don't. And if I don't, then I'm a failure. And I'm like, well, no, what did I learn? What's the gold? Was that a failure, or was that something I actually needed? Was that a huge success because I learned for me what didn't work, so that I could be more clear about what would work for me?
I mean, the classic, sales truism is that, you might have to knock on like 100 doors before you get your first yes, but it's a numbers game, right? But it's so true. You see that, and it's true for people in my industry. Like when I work with young copywriters who are trying to get clients, and they're email me or message me on Instagram talking about how, I haven't been able to get a client. It's like, well, how many people did you reach out to? And 7 or 10. And it's like, reach out to 1,000 people and you'll get your first client. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It's a numbers game. And so technically, each time you hear a no, it's a rejection or a failure, except for it's not, because it's just like another step in the process, right? So to your point, it's really only a failure if you stop doing it and give up. Then it's, I guess, a failure.
Right.
But if you keep going, it's just a part of the journey.
What a good coaching. What good coaching. That's a very coaching thing. Yeah. Well, let's so Stefan, let's take a look at the other side of that question now. So something that that is outside of your comfort zone, and other people, that is something they like doing, or that's in their comfort zone.
Yeah, there's like a lot. I'm like, where do I begin? I mean, there's simple things like, like going back to school, like math, right? I'm a creative. So sort of like the mathematical, like anything engineering, I love learning about that stuff, but I'm not comfortable with kind of doing any sort of calculations beyond ones that are very essential for business. I'm good at those ones, but as soon as we get beyond that, and then as I'm very much a visionary, and so I think a gift is that I can sort of play an operator for little short periods of time, but I get uncomfortable pretty quickly, and it's very common. So if anyone who listens to this is an incredible, operator or COO, and please reach out to me if you're looking for some. Like it's so hard. It's so hard to find a good operator.
It is.
Yeah, it's like the kryptonite of visionary entrepreneurs.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm the same way. Like I just need a group of people to do these things that I don't know how you feel about it, but I could do them and they'd be fine, but I really don't enjoy it. And it just sucks the energy out of me. And there's people that just love that stuff, right? Like I'm talking about like detail oriented work, processing, like putting together processes, standard operating procedures. I can, I would say we're both talented people. We can do it, but like, man, I don't want to spend my time doing that. But I know somebody, I have a client who's a phenomenal operator. He's not for you because he runs his own business, but he loves systems and he loves using Notion, if you know what Notion is. And he loves to go into Notion and create workflows. I'm like, how do you love this? He just really loves it. Probably like for him, that's actually his artistry. And he's really good at it. Just like you have your artistry and I have mine. He loves it to be like, oh, I created this workflow out of nothing. And that's his version of like creativity and thing, and really fills him up. It's really good. We have people like that.
Yeah. Well, what's funny to me is I love the idea of systems and processes and workflows. Like, nothing turns me on more. Like I'm so excited by it. But if I have to be the one to create it, then immediately it's like the fantasy meets reality. So, but the idea of it's great,
and
so good.
For me too, it's like the idea of then getting to use it, phenomenal. I just don't want to implement it. You're like, so all I have to do is fill out this form and then this thing happens and then this happens and then the output is it. Great. The invoice is sent out. Yeah. I think we're like, have you ever taken any sort of DISC?
I haven't in a while, but I forget. I've taken that, like the Kobe stuff and all that. I mean, I know I'm a quick start.
Me too. Like you're a high, and DISC would be a high I, like high influence, high D, which is results, low C, which is detail oriented. So, which most creatives will land somewhere in like I, usually because you want to influence through your art and your creativity, which makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
me too.
I remember being an I, but yeah.
Me too. Nice. So before we go to the commercial break, let's talk about speaking. So if I was to give you 5 minutes, and we don't need to do 5 minutes here, but if I said, you got 5 minutes and you get to talk to the entire world about something for 5 minutes, what would you talk about? And at the end of your 5 minutes, what would you want us to do?
Man, that's a great one. I probably would talk about empathy and how to have more of it, and even like the neuroscience and behind like emotion and how emotion and empathy are intertwined. And at the end of it, I would want people to hopefully find a few ways that they could practice being more empathetic in the next 24 hours. So when they, stop trying to talk, what will be a place you could employ empathy, today?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Not enough of that. I think most people would agree there's not enough of that in the world. Is this something that you have come to learn, or is this something that's come intuitively to you as to how you're built?
I think I've always been pretty empathetic. Like it's funny, I would laugh because my mom, when I was a little kid, and we'd be in a shopping center and you'd see like a homeless person, and my mom would be like, well, you don't know, they probably were a Vietnam veteran and they were discharged in 1968. And she'd have this entire elaborate backstory. And we'd be like, Mom, like that's probably mostly not true, but she was so empathetic that she just, and so I think I got that early from her. But also as a marketer, even as a copywriter, when I was younger, I would write for, niches or categories of people who were on different sides of the political spectrum for me, or different demographics. And I remember at first kind of laughing at them a little bit, or sort of looking at them kind of derisively, I guess. And then realizing how stupid that was. And when I learned to actually love them and really love them and then come from a place of service and really understand them. And instead of feeling like they were an adversary, that they were like a friend, is when I was helping, it made my marketing so much better. my copywriting is much better. And then it kind of transformed into everything else in life, is really trying to, come from a place of love and see people's, see things from their shoes and their perspective.
Yeah. Oh, that's been a big thing I've had to work on really in the last 5 years, especially. And I find I have a lot more fun in life with that attitude as well. As like, hey, these people are doing the best with the tools they got. We may not agree, but that's okay. We do have a lot of the same interest. What we definitely have is a lot of the same basic needs.
Yeah.
They just might be met in different ways. Yeah. That's an incredible speech. Before we go to the break, I was curious, do you relate to yourself as an empath? Like, do you know what that means?
Well, maybe, but I'd probably easier if you explain how you mean it so that I don't misconstrue it.
Well, I don't know if this is a scientific term, but my understanding of empaths, I'm not one, is people that actually feel others' emotions. So you probably have friends like this. I have a few friends like this. If you're in a room with them and somebody starts crying, they'll start crying and they don't need to know why. Like, they just feel the emotions, or they get really excited when other people do.
So I think that I have that ability, but that I sort of strategically turn it on and off. So I won't start crying because someone else is crying, but I can get into that state, and I'm a good sort of reader of people. And I think, because I think there's a point of, there's a place where it becomes too much as an empath, right? You're constantly taking and being driven by everyone else's emotional state, and you're never owning your own emotional state.
Yeah.
That's a difficult place to be in. So I think I've gotten good at, I'm in my state most of the time, but I can kind of transfer energy or go out and kind of meld with somebody else's state as needed for certain reasons.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great skill as a marketer too, to like put yourself in the buyer's shoes, or the potential market shoes. Awesome conversation so far. Well, let's go to the commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Stefan, we are back. What else do you want us to know about you?
Oh, man. What do you think people want to know about me? I think things I love are entrepreneurship, the stuff I mentioned about failure, mindset, right? Which mindset is one of those funny things that you just sort of think is woo-woo or not important until you get kind of further into life and then realize that all the really successful people all actually really focus on mindset and care about it. Oh
my God. I have to interrupt you. I'm so with you on this. I wish that they taught you in school that your mindset is more important than the technical know-how, and just being intelligent isn't generally enough. Like I know a lot of successful people. I'm sure you do as well. Every last one of them, including you and I consider us successful people sitting here today.
Yeah.
I'm not really probably much smarter, like IQ level, or like I don't have like an encyclopedia of knowledge, but I've worked on, like what you said, the shift of failure, and also be willing to take action. And I just want to mention something right now because I was watching it last night. I don't know if you've watched Stutz on Netflix. It's Jonah Hill's.
I'm excited to. No, yeah, it's on my short list. I almost watched it. It's funny.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I've watched half of it, and for those who haven't, please go watch it. But his therapist is talking about this idea of string of pearls. And we control our string of pearls, and each pearl that you put on that string is just another action you take, and no action is more or less important than the other one. And so if you put I have a big decision or I have a small decision, if you just make it as make the next decision, and then it's really funny. Not to spoil, I'll just say this little part. He talks about how each pearl has a little turd in it too, which I thought was really funny because Stutz, the therapist, he's like a really visual person. Man, definitely, if it's on your short list, it's great. Yeah. I think it's a really, as a mindset person, just seeing their interaction, super cool. Sorry for taking us down the tangent. And maybe we'll get this episode sponsored by Netflix or Jonah, if you're listening, or Stutz, if you're listening, just give you a shout out. We'll split the revenue here.
Perfect.
So back to you. So mindset, entrepreneurship, all that good stuff.
Yeah. I remember maybe 4 years ago being at a brunch at somebody's house in Las Vegas where I had just kind of moved back to full time. I had my daughter had just been born, and as a local entrepreneur, and he had people over for this brunch. And I remember talking, maybe it was 5 years, but talking to like one of the guests, and he was writing a book on mindset. And in my head being like, mindset, like, is it really great? Another mindset book, is it really that important? All of that. And this was after I'd had some good success. I'd taken a supplement company that I founded from 1 million to 23 million in revenue in like a single year. I sold a lot of stuff with my copy. Like, I'd had some victories, but then I started thinking about it and thinking about how all of these really smart, talented people I knew who hadn't had that success that I'd had, that you would have thought they would have. And then it was sort of like, what was the commonality? And it was often like attitude. It was how they perceived the world and how they responded to what happened to them, right? There's the idea of responsibility from Stephen Covey, and essentially we don't get to control what happens to us. We get to control, our ability to respond, right?
That's right.
To respond. And, and then as I've mentored both business owners and also a lot of freelancers and copywriters who are, coming into this world of trying to quit a job and, make income following their dreams. And it's really, you really see it there, because you see people who are not native English speakers. They're sort of like, they seem all over the place, but they just work really hard at becoming a successful copywriter, and they get clients and they succeed, and they suddenly are making, $10,000 or $15,000 a month. Right. And like in freelancer income, and you're like, wow. Right. And then you see people who are really smart, but they're not doing the work. They're self-sabotaging. And again, it's not always people's fault. I mean, a lot of it goes back to programming, right? When we're young and what our parents told us, what school told us, what the world has told us. And our beliefs around money and success. A lot of people think, money is evil, like money's the root of all evil.
Sure.
So that it's hard to, so there's a lot of programming that goes on there, but yeah, I've just seen it too many times at this point. I mean, like literally thousands of times where on both sides, for people who just, no special kind of talent, including myself. I would like going back to IQ, my IQ is not that high. Right. But it's like no special talent, but just work hard and put in and do the practice and put in the work and get in the reps and have success. And then others who have all the talent in the world, but don't put in the work and, don't get the success. And so, yeah, it's just such a powerful thing. It's really, it's alluring because you're like, man, it's so simple. It's like, you just put in the work and have the right mindset. You really will actually be successful, right? Like 95% of the time. Like, of course, we're going to fail sometimes. Or, and part of the right mindset is when you fail, you don't stop, you keep going. But it's really that simple. Some people don't do it, and it can start to drive you crazy. You're like, how do I get everyone in the world to do this? But nobody's solved that quite yet,
Well, I'll add one more thing, and I'm trying not to have it sound self-serving for both what you and I do, but I do believe it is, don't do it alone.
Yeah.
Don't sit and hammer on something you don't like doing or you're not good at and expect to be like, if you're, for example, like if you're not a good copywriter and that's core to your business, like let's say you're selling a product.
Yeah.
Products need good copy. Don't try and learn how to be a great copywriter. If that's not something you enjoy doing, go and like figure out what you're like. I'm a huge fan of strengths-based work and figuring out what you're really good at and like 10xing that thing, as opposed to like, well, I'd better learn these 26 different business skills so that I can run my own business and not pay anybody else. You also know this too, working with successful people and being a successful entrepreneur. No successful people do it all themselves. Not even close. They generally are really good at a couple things that they figured out are their sweet spot, and pay other people, hire people, find resources, coaching, consulting, therapy, Stutz. If you're listening, we'll send you some clients. I can only imagine what he charges, but again, just don't do it alone. Yeah, don't do it alone. The last thing I want to say before we move to the next thing, Stefan, is I had a gentleman on the podcast yesterday. His name is Chris Joyce. That episode's not out yet. And he runs a company called Gusher, and they help fund startups, but they're not a venture capital firm. So you don't actually need capital work with them. Right. And he works with high performance entrepreneurs as well, really people in the tech. And he showed me the thing that he uses, and he has this coin, and he held it up, and it has two sides, and one side says, never give up. And the other side says, I am enough. And he says, if you can believe I am enough and you can never give up on the thing that you really want, you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, which is why there are millions of therapists and coach and counselors and all that stuff. Again, programming.
Yeah. I think people have, well, that's interesting, the coin though, because there's a sort of tension. One thing I think you learn as an entrepreneur or whatever, and as you get successful in your path in life, is that balance. There's like a tension in a way of being satisfied and happy with who you are and where you are in life, and not always feeling like you need to compare yourself to like others and that you are enough, right? And then yet still having this like desire for more, and more doesn't need to be money, and often it's not, but it's more impact, more growth, more reach, like. And so the two can exist. They're very interesting. It's a duality, right? They can exist simultaneously. But I think we're afraid sometimes, like, people who don't celebrate wins ever, because they're afraid if I take a minute to relish this victory, then, they're afraid that everything will go away. They have to constantly be dissatisfied. And it's like, you have to be both. It's like you're satisfied with who you are and where you are, and yet you're eternally dissatisfied and wanting to go further. And the big secret is that it's like a quantum thing, right? You can be in both positions at the same time.
Yeah. I call that the curse of the high performer. Curse of the high performer. I don't know if I made that up or stole it from somebody. If I stole it from somebody, I apologize. But it's the kind of people I work with, and like, oh, what's next? What's next? What's next? I'm like, well, you just got a promotion and you're making double more money than you ever thought you were going to make in your life. And you have this big impact. Oh, yeah. So what's next? Okay, great. Yeah. And I'm also speaking to myself because I operate the same way a lot of times. It's programmed, and it's a programmed part of personality and partly just, something to prove or whatever it is. Like, we all have these mechanisms that operate inside of us.
Let me say one thing that's maybe a little morbid, but maybe powerful. Is like, the last time that you're going to ask what's next for most people was going to be when they're on their deathbed, right? And when you get to that point, all those other times of what's next, like, might not feel that important to you, right? You're going to look back and think not just what's next, but you're also going to be thinking about what was. And so measuring life, and then more than just constantly looking for the next. And again, I'm a capitalist. I'm like an entrepreneur. Like, I love it. But like, I'm also someone who is really intentional about spending tons of time with my child, my daughter, and family time, who, because it's the cliche stuff, right? That's the stuff that matters, right? Your loved ones, your family, your impact, and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I just had that idea of like, what's next? That's the final times on your deathbed, but you're also going to be looking back, at that point. But maybe good to just sort of take a breather now sometimes. So,
not morbid at all.
Where you're at. Yeah, no,
I don't even call it
philosophy major. So
I like it. I like now. Okay, so now we're going to spend the rest of the time talking philosophy. I'm not a philosophy major. Yeah. I was actually an advertising major. That's fine. You're a philosophy major and you do creative marketing work, and I was in advertising, and I've never worked 1 minute in advertising in my life.
There you go.
College. All right, Stefan. So this is the point of the show where I like to have my guests ask me something that I can answer for you and for everybody listening. So what's on your mind to ask me now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit here?
I have lots of questions for you. I'm trying to think of the one I most want to ask.
You might even get two if you ask. If you're very lucky, I might give you.
I'm going to ask you a fun one, and then I'll ask you one that's maybe more tactical.
Please.
Is that fair?
No, I am wide open, and I have no idea what's coming here. So please.
The fun one is like, what's one thing that you sort of like a probably unrealistic goal or something like that you sort of believe is entirely possible? And for example, like lots of middle-aged guys who kind of feel like they could be professional golfers, even though like they probably couldn't, right? It could be things like that. What's one that you sort of like to keep and cherish?
Yeah. Oh, this is so perfect. I literally mentioned this to somebody today as a joke. I'm a big Deadhead.
Yeah.
I love Dead & Co. Love Grateful Dead. I'm a guitar player. I'm not a Jerry Garcia or John Mayer level guitar player. I can hold my own, but I am not at that level. I'm also not a singer. And somebody said today, they texted me, they said, oh my gosh, I have to share something with you. And I'm like, wait, did John and Bob decide that they're going to keep touring after next year and that John's going to leave and that I'm on the short list to be the new Jerry Garcia character, John Mayer? Now, I am not even a good singer, so that is like not even a thing, but I do hold out hope that someday I will get to play in a decent, I don't care about being famous, but I would like to be a touring musician, a touring guitar player, which I think is pretty common for middle-aged white guys that, play guitar. I hold out hope that someday somebody's going to hear me and go, hey, but you know what? I don't know that it's unrealistic because I have enough friends where I think it's possible they go like, hey, this band is looking for somebody in this cover band. I don't even need to make money. I just want to like be in front of people again. Cause I used to play a little bit and then pandemic hit. I don't know. But it feels unrealistic that would be my thing, but I hold out this hope that it would be my full-time gig, or it would be like a thing I would do 6 months of the year and then run my own business the other part, or maybe do both and run it from the road, like in my tour bus. It's possible, it's possible. Although they're, 15-year-olds that you go on YouTube and you watch them play guitar and you go, wow, like just phenomenal talents. That was a fun one. Yeah. It's very timely since I had texted with my friend about that this morning.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for sharing. That's a cool one.
Yeah.
And the more tactical one, I love that one was super fun is, and I agree. I mean, I like the idea that just on that for a second, like totally, why couldn't you? Right. I'm an optimist, and also you've got the talent, you've got the network, it's absolutely saying that could happen. So I like
but not the singing part. That would, nobody would pay. Probably. Nobody would pay. No, I wouldn't pay to listen to myself.
Sure. That part. Maybe not.
Yeah.
What's one like I kind of like, I'm thinking about like mindset mistakes or sort of that or a productivity hack. I mean, I guess so we could do it either one, but I'm curious about one other productivity hack that you think is, let's do that. That's super easy, super simple, anyone can do, and yet most people just aren't doing it, and it kind of makes you scratch your head as to like why. It could be productivity or performance.
Yeah. Oh man, I had actually, can I give you both of those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is mindset. These are very tactical things. Facts versus interpretations. Facts versus interpretations. Like you mentioned the story about your mom.
Right.
What are the facts about that homeless person? What are the interpretations or the stories that we make up? So when we're self-coaching, what's the facts and what are the interpretations? Which leads me to the productivity hack. I call it a productivity hack, but I'm not a huge fan of like hacks in the way that some people use them, like the quick fix. What I will say, and when I'm coaching people, is this is actually core to all coaching. So this is, and why there's books written about this. Mel Robbins wrote a book about this. We just talked about it with the Stutz. What's the next thing that you know to do to move this thing forward that you want? And the question is, what's the next thing? Because most of us, myself included, we get tripped up in it's too big. It's a lot of work. And you mentioned this earlier too. You're sitting down in front of your computer to write some copy and you have writer's block. And I'm not a writer, but most of the times when I read like interviews with authors and such, are like, you just need to start writing.
Yeah.
And then you need to make it consistent. And you write whatever you do. Like, you might know, I think a lot of novelists will say something like 8,000 words a day or something. Maybe I'm making this up, but they'll be like, I think with Stephen King is like, I get up and I do this same thing every day, no matter whether I'm inspired or not. And I just do it. So for me, it's like, what's the very next thing to do when you're feeling stuck is a great hack. And sometimes the very next thing to do takes you 30 seconds. Sometimes it takes you an hour. Sometimes it takes you a week. But what's the next thing? So that, because this too, like our mind is good at, when we can get our mind to chop things into small, manageable pieces, we can do it. This is why phone numbers are in the format they're in, right? Because we can remember the 3 numbers at a time. But if I said, hey, here's the 10 numbers, your brain goes, no. So how do you chunk it down and do one thing after another instead of, I mean, it's like eating the elephant is like the weird, such a weird saying. That's the productivity ad hack. So if anybody out there is listening and they know that there's something next for them, whether it be getting a new job or whether it be hiring their next copywriter, whatever the thing is, like, what's the next thing that you know? And people will generally know the next thing to do. They don't need to be told. They might need to be told the entire process, but they don't need to be told like what's the next thing. And then ask yourself, are you doing it? That's it. Easier said than easier said than done. But Mel Robbins is a multimillionaire, if you know who Mel Robbins is, because of this, 5-second rule. She made millions of dollars and really grew her career from the most obvious productivity hack ever. Oh, you get up and you don't want to do something and then you count to 5 and you do it anyway. That's not new stuff. Then that's not rocket science. That's not something that people are going to go, oh my gosh, that is mind blowing. But you know what? It works because it's simple. Yeah. Count to 5 and do it anyway. Whoa, wow, thanks. Now let me pay $12 for that's the whole book, right? Is how do you do that? Well, how do you do that is you literally count to 5 and you do it anyway. Yeah, that's what I got for you. Hopefully that was valuable.
Yeah, that's great.
And hopefully, and if you ever see me on stage somewhere, you can say, I know that guy. I'll get you backstage. If it's with the dead. Yeah. Because are you out in Vegas now?
I'm in Scottsdale now. So
okay, yeah, okay. So I think you have some outdoor amphitheaters there. You never know. I'm an optimist as well. You just never know. I just need to spend a lot more time playing guitar. Good question. That was fun. Thanks. I really appreciate those. Let's see. Let me ask you, what are you passionate about?
Family, like my daughter and being a great dad is something I'm really passionate about.
How old is your daughter now? You said
she'll be 5 in January.
Yeah, nice. We have a almost 7-year-old daughter. The daughters and dad thing at this age is awesome. So good.
It's so good, and it's it's fun because I'm a creative. I'm pretty laid back, but then starting to have those things where I'll take her to school most mornings, and the conversation about, hey, what's one thing you're grateful for? Right? We do that every morning, and then it's like, what's one nice thing you could do for somebody else today? And she answers, and she asked me. And, just explaining like things in the world to her and getting to we're all going to get programmed, especially as kids. And so I'm trying to do it in a way that encourages creativity and open-mindedness and empathy and all of that, and helps her to have to go back to mindset, right? To have a good mindset from an early age. And, plus she's just she's my daughter. So she's the cutest, sweetest, most amazing, little being on the planet. So, that's something I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah. Is she? Yeah. Oh man, daughter. Yeah. We also have a 2-year-old son, which if you decide to have another one and it's a boy, that's a different experience.
I bet.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if you're we'll geek out as dads and daughters for a second. I'm curious, our experience with our daughter, she's quite gentle, as a little kid, like a 2-3-year-old, quite gentle, quite demure, very, careful. And then we had our son, and when he started to walk, I'm like, this dude walks in a room and looks and sees what can he either break or break himself on with we didn't even have to block off the outlets with our daughter. She wasn't interested in any of those kind of fiddling, and he just wants to fiddle with everything. I'm like, oh yeah, this is how men and women are. That's great. What's your daughter's first name?
Eden.
Oh, it's beautiful. Love that. Yeah. Is she going into kindergarten? Is she in kindergarten or going
next year? No, she's in pre-K right now, and then kindergarten.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. Yeah. You're a little bit behind us. I won't tell you as they turn almost 7, the language that starts to come out, but I'm like, it's not swearing, but I'm like, where did you get that attitude? What? Come on.
She did. She knows, she learned, this is going to sound awful on a podcast, but she learned the F word from a little boy, but she doesn't really understand why it's that bad. So she said it, and then it was something where, but again, as a philosophy major and a copywriter, it's like, well, why is that word bad? And you're like, well, is any word actually bad? But you don't want to, and so you're trying to explain well, look, if you say it at school, people may look at you differently. They may think that you are bad, and they may treat you differently. Parents might not want, your friends' parents might not want you to play with them. Trying to explain the consequences of using this word, and yet trying to be it's not that the word is objectively bad in a way. It's I don't know. It's very interesting to. And again, I'm sure some parents would be because I said so, but I'm not that guy. So I'm let's go down the rabbit hole. Let's explore it.
Yeah.
But But it's weird because she didn't learn a bunch of it. It was just this basically, a little boy who's maybe 8 or 9 and sort of different like background. And he basically, I guess, taught it to her. And so that's kind of a little bit earlier than I would have liked, to be sure.
Yeah.
But, I don't know what she can do about it, you know?
No,
she doesn't use it. I mean, she went through a phase where she'd be like, I don't know if I can say this word. And I'd be like, well, you know, first time, like, what word is it? And then she would say it. And you're like, well, yeah, you're right. You can't say it. And she kept trying to do that. Or like, yeah, you can't. You're right. So just stop. But now she's kind of gotten over it. She doesn't use it anymore. So.
Oh man, that's good. Prepare for a lot more of that. Our daughter's in first grade now, and she comes home and talks. It's a lot of bathroom talk. I don't know. Just like, I guess that's like the thing. I mean, maybe it was when we were growing up too, but I will. Last thing on this one before we move on is I mentioned I'm a big deadhead. And one of the things I like to do with my 2-year-old, he loves like daddy guitars. And so we'll like watch like live concerts, like recordings of them. His favorite song is Casey Jones. Do you know that song?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what the second lyric of that song is? The second line of the song?
No.
It's riding that train. High on cocaine.
Yeah.
He now knows that whole line, and he's said it to people not in the context of the song. And that makes for a very awkward conversation. Like, where would a 2-year-old learn this? I'm like, no, it's from Casey Jones. But now my wife's like, we need to trick him into a different word, because he actually would be like, ha and cocaine. I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's super funny. Yeah.
It is really funny.
How's your daddy doing? Oh, riding that train high on cocaine.
He's riding that train high on cocaine. He's got to watch his speed. Oh man. But but my style is we're still going to watch the concerts anyway, and we'll work it out. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Stefan, what is something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Ooh.
This is the Stutz version of the show. This is the Stutz portion of the show. Now we're gonna get deep in the therapeutic work. No.
Well, no, I don't. I hope this isn't a cop-out answer, because I'm gonna say that I'll say something I was afraid of, but that I've kind of worked through, and then maybe it'll come together. Because as someone when I started putting myself out there more, like doing podcasts, my email list, where I'm writing like. I do very personal kind of like types of content where I'll share a lot of things that are going on in my life. Yeah. But there's that fear of, am I doing this for the wrong reasons? Am I doing it because, for vanity, or because I'm an egomaniac, or because I'm a narcissist, right? There's this fear of like, why do I need to put myself out there? Why is my opinion important? Why should I share? And that was, something that I was afraid, and then you're afraid of being found out. Like, what if that's true? What if I am, like any of those things? What got me through that, though, was the fact that it just helped people. So if I talked about anything from specific tactical things to, I've got like many entrepreneurs ADD, and I started taking a small dosage of Adderall, and it was like life-changing for me, right? It was sure. And sharing that to my email list and all of these other people who then like it destigmatized it for them, and then they, saw their doctor, and now their lives are significantly better. And so I just realized that I could help people, because a lot of people are afraid to share what's really going on the inside, or to, be, especially on a larger scale. And it's uncommon for people who, like, I'm not at all like famous, but I'm like niche famous. And this little niche of copywriters and digital marketers, I'm like very well known, right? So even from that context, for someone like in my position to share like that, or the failures or times where I wrote something and it didn't do well, it really helps people. So that helped me to get over it. But that was a fear I had, was, what if like
you happen to be talking to somebody that works with a lot of like one-on-one work,
right?
We don't talk fears as much because it's coaching, not therapy, but that's a very common thing. Is what I'm doing for the reasons that I say or portray in the world. And the truth is, a lot of people, the answer is no,
right?
Like, it's like you said, I want to be a copywriter because I want to help people. Well, and also because you think it's an easy way to make money as a freelancer, that's cool. And like, of course you're not going to say that, but that's a very normal thing. And also usually gets broken up when you hear the stories of how you helped people, destigmatizing something, sharing your failures. And I actually like that, because to me, in the personal development space or the entrepreneurial space, the age of like perfection seems to be kind of done.
Yeah.
Like, we want to know you've got a child, and we want to know this. Like, I know for me, like, the people I like to do business with, I like to get to know, like, I like to get to know, like, what their motivations are. And I don't know if this is true, and maybe it's because of social media, but it seems, I don't know how old you are. I'm 45. It seems like my parents' generation, which would have been, they were born in 54s, like, there was this thing of the business person was just like this robotic, skilled laborer who would do these things. And I'm talking like white collar stuff,
Right.
but you wouldn't know anything about them. And now that seems to kind of gone away, at least when you're talking about people that work for themselves or like CEO, like smaller businesses. People want to know the real Jason, the real Stefan, like what, and like, that's actually good to be authentic about it.
Yeah, I would argue, I would go so far as to say that there's this whole idea of the experience economy, right? And how people, but I think we're actually kind of also in saying, like, I should probably like try to trademark this if no one's used it, but like the emotion economy, because I think like so much today people want like, you want to buy from and do business with, to your point, people and brands that you know, like, and trust. I mean, authenticity is so important, and aligned values, and just sharing. This emotional resonance, I guess, is so valuable. So I think that to your point, and especially now with going back to the AI part we talked about at the beginning, when because content is going to change drastically, right? Because now with AI, I can go put out 1,000 videos about a topic pretty fast and have like an AI voiceover do it, and you'd be hard pressed to know the difference. I can have the video like clips, like kind of like psychologically manipulative. I don't mean that in a bad way, but clips that can make you feel in certain ways, like, put to the video. I can put them out. Like, content's going to be flooding the marketplace like never before.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting. There's going to be weird second and third and fourth order kind of implications to that. But the counter to that is that people are going to value authenticity and emotional connection and also experience too. So I think emotion and experience combined is really a lot of the future. It's funny. There's a big divide. It's like AI auto-generate all that, and it's also like authentic emotional connection and experience.
Oh, that's cool. That's a whole different episode of a podcast that we're going to do.
Yeah.
That's a great, I would love to dig in on that one specifically. I mean, all of it, but that's really interesting. All right. So as we start to wrap up here, I want to ask you now how you see the world. So earlier you mentioned you consider yourself an optimist. So how do you see the world?
Yeah, I am an optimist. I think that's a hallmark of being an entrepreneurial type of person and a visionary, I suppose, is that I wake up every day believing that this day will be the best day kind of ever. And that it doesn't matter. The important part about that is it's easy to feel that way when you had a really, not easy, but often you have a really crappy day. You can be like, well, today's got to be better than that. But when you've had an amazing day, to still feel like today's going to be even better. So really, looking into that, I feel like the road is just full of possibilities and opportunities. I think there's things that freak me out like everybody else. I mean, with going back this AI stuff and nuclear war, all the things that I can't control really, but that are scary. But at the end of the day, there's also never been a better time to be alive. And like the amount of creativity we're about to unleash into the world because of this AI stuff, like, it was already happening with the creator economy and so many different economies. But yeah, just very optimistic overall.
I love that. We need more people with empathy and optimism.
Yeah.
Don't ever go into politics.
I know.
That's my own bias.
I think about it because I'm like, I could be the one, the really authentic, honest politician but it's just such a thankless, crappy job. I think that's also such a boring brand in politics. Like, everybody's like, oh, it's the person who actually talks about good things and like believes in possibility. They're like, nobody pays attention because the media won't cover it. I mean, that's a whole different, bias. That's my bias. Let's see. So how can the audience connect with you, learn more about what you do, what your companies do, all that good stuff? Yeah, I think that, you can go find me on Instagram, like at Stefan Georgi, STEFANGEORGI. Also on Twitter a little bit.
We'll throw that on. Do you have a new check mark? I'm asking people that.
I haven't bothered yet, but
you don't want to pay the $8. What a hilarious.
No, I wasn't that active. But
Yeah.
I'm just giving
We'll
one
put
more
all this in the
shout
show
out.
notes as well too. So all of your links will be in the show notes and everything as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, go ahead.
No, I say Instagram's the best place for people to hit you up and see what you're up to in the world.
Yeah, if you want to get on my email list, which is pretty cool. I mean, I wrote a cool thing on failures today. It's a lot of copywriters and marketers and business owners on it, but
Nice.
A lot of my content is also just, around like failure, around other ideas and things like, right? Because I love that stuff. So if you go to SPG, so my initials, .fun, like we're having fun, /research. Yeah, /research. It basically will give you this research module from a copywriting methodology I have, but it's how to like do psychographic research to understand the pain points, hopes, dreams, victories, failures of a market, whether you sell to them or you want to sell to them. And even if you don't want that, though, you'll also go onto my email list by getting it.
Cool.
And so, spg.fun /research.
.fun. I've never seen that as a thing before. I mean, it's obviously available. That's cool. I didn't know that whatever the internet, not the internet police, but I didn't realize that was a thing, that there was a new, what is a postfix to call it, I guess, or maybe it's a postfix, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad we got to connect here, get to know each other live. Can't wait to have you back on in the new year and talk about the emotion economy. Yeah. And maybe by then you'll have it trademarked or whatever it is that you'd like to come talk about. I think, man, a creative philosophy major. I'm like, we could probably start a podcast and do something every week and never have enough to talk about. But I just want to thank you so much for being on. Leave us, please, with some short and sweet words of wisdom that you live by and you want other people to know.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on as well. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
And I guess, all right, this is not going to be the most profound thing ever, but I just like to remember that the cream rises to the top. It tends to rise to the top. My dad told me that when I was young and then kind of like going to different jobs and being impatient. But the idea being, essentially going back to like put in the work, show up. And if you do the right things, you'll tend to get the outcome, right? So really, the outcomes are determined by the inputs, so to speak. So just remember that times where you feel a little bit kind of like impatient or frustrated, generally, if you do the right things, you'll get the right outcomes.
I love that. Now, if you do the right things, you'll get the right outcomes. That's brilliant. I love that. Again, thank you so much for being on. Thanks for connecting, and best wishes to you and the family over the holidays. We're recording this in early December, probably release it in early January. So pre-holidays here. Hope that all goes well for you. Please, everybody, check out the show notes for the links to connect. Awesome. I can't wait to join your email list. I love this sort of stuff, and we'll be talking again soon.
Cool. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.